There's an infinite number of other things that you're not doing. You've sacrificed all those other possibilities to that one thing. What is that one thing that you're sacrificing everything to? Is it your whim? Well, that's not going to make you very popular with your tomorrow self or with anybody who might want to be around you.
Yeah.
Like, what's the aim of the sacrifice? Okay, there's more. Community is based on sacrifice. Well, why? Well, when you're 3 and you learn to take turns, what are you doing when you take turns? You're sacrificing your turn. Why? So that your friend can have a turn. Why? So that you have a friend. Right. And then maybe you have a bunch of friends. Now you have a community or a tribe. Are you better off? Yeah, way better off. You're not lonesome. You've got people around to help you. You've got people around to take care of. Right? That's a great deal. And then your little becomes a town or a city, and then it becomes a nation. And it's one nation under God. And the God at the top of all that is the principle of, it's in part the principle of the upon which community is founded. That's why Christ's life is the ultimate sacrifice, right? And that just happens to be true. It just turns out that that's true. It's the sacrifice upon which the community is founded. Well, we even know that because look what we've done. This is the structure of a European town, right? Classic European town. There's a church or a cathedral at the center, often the highest building in town by design. It's the center. At the center of the church is an altar. At the center of the altar is a sacrifice. Why? Because the community is founded on sacrifice. It's like, oh, and we were doing that. We were acting that out. No one knew. It's like, turns out we knew what we were doing all along. We act out things that we don't understand all the time. And some of them are very profound things. And that happens to be one of them. So it's at the beginning of, there's this weird idea in John, right at the beginning of the Gospel of John, that Christ is the Word of God that's there at the beginning of time. Now, the beginning of time is a weird idea in the biblical corpus because the God who operates at the beginning of time is outside of time. So it's not exactly the beginning. It's the beginning and now and the future. So God is conjuring the world out of potential at the beginning of time, now and forever. Okay, so there's something happening there, this wrestling with potential. That is the way the world is engendered. And human beings do that. That's why we're considered made in the image of God. Okay, what are we doing? We're performing the sense upon which the foundations of order are predicated. With every glance we take, with everything we attend to or don't attend to, with every word we utter, we're wrestling the world of potential into being. That is what we're doing. And what is it that confronts us? Is it the determinate material? In part, because things are concretized. But everything that's concretized is still rife with potential. You know, this is a book, unless I pick it up and swat you with it, in which case it's instantly a weapon. It's like everything has its realm of potential around it, right? So we're surrounded by potential, and that's what our consciousness focuses on. You ignore everything that's predictable. Mm-hmm. You wrestle with the tohu vabohu, the potential that's there in front of you. And we do that in the microcosm, but it's the embodiment of the same principle of sacrifice that the Word of God uses at the beginning of time to cast the world into order. It's like, yeah, turns out that's true. So, whoa. No kidding. No kidding. It's like, I have no idea what we're going to do when we realize that these stories are true. Because that's different than believing them, right? Because that's been the Christian insistence forever. You have to believe, which you do. Like, look, you have to have faith. And people might say, well, I'm only going to act in accordance with the evidence. It's like, okay, so let's say you go out on a date and you fall in love with the girl you're out with and you decide to get married. It's like, what? That's from the evidence, is it? That's why you're going to get married, because of the evidence. You have no idea what your marriage is going to be like. You don't have the foggiest notion of who it is that you are now tangled up with. You don't have a clue. And so why do you get married? Well, because it's an act of sacrifice. All other women are off the table. It's an act of faith. And the same thing happens when you move to a new city or when you take a new job. The evidence is not there. Now, that doesn't mean you can make stupid decisions. But all the time when we're pursuing the adventure of our life, always, it's an act of faith. It's not an adventure otherwise. If you know with 100% certainty that your bet will pay off, well, first of all, you're being an automaton in some ways. And second, there's no excitement in that. It's so interesting that the act of faith, this is by definition, it's something I cover in detail in the book. The act of faith is by definition the adventure of life. I mean, who would have ever guessed that? Why do you have faith? So that weirdly exciting things can happen to you all the time. So that's something else I tried to detail in this book is the relationship between truth and adventure. And that's such fun. It's so fun to understand that. So let's say you decide that you're just going to say what you think. You know, like not carelessly and not self-servingly, but that's just your rule. If someone asks you a question, you just say what you believe to be true. Okay, so that's a sacrificial gesture. Why? Well, because you don't get to decide what you want for the outcome. You know, because I could be sitting here thinking, well, I should tell Mikhaila what she wants to hear because, you know, maybe she'll make a business deal with me then. Yeah. It's like, no, you don't get to do that. You get to say what you think. And then you'd have no idea what's going to happen. No idea. And that's ridiculously entertaining.
Or I suppose sometimes you do know what's going to happen if you say what you think, which is why people avoid it, right? Or think they know.
No. You might know what will happen in the moment.
Ah, I see.
But you don't know how that's going to exponentially expand. Okay, so, you know, you've seen this. So lots of the people that we know have been canceled. So I talked to Graham Linehan, for example, this week. Podcast is coming out soon. He was the UK's top comedy sitcom writer. He won like a Lifetime Achievement Award for it. He was like the number one guy. And beloved by his audience. And they just nailed him. Like 5 years ago, he was canceled. No job. No writing opportunities. It blew his marriage into pieces because they went after his wife, and he said they never had any trouble before this. Then he lost his job and all hell broke out and they tortured her and he lost his marriage and like he just lost everything. And he said he doesn't regret it. And part of the reason he doesn't regret it is because of all the people he met. And we know all these weird people who've been canceled and they've all kind of aggregated together. And
hilarious
you think,
people.
Those people are worth knowing. It's like, they're really worth
way
knowing.
More entertaining than the average person, too. Yeah. Or like fun
that's
people.
Because they actually, and that's the thing about all those comedians, that like Rogan's a good example of that. Or Theo Vaughn. It's like, I'll just say what I think. Maybe it'll be funny. It's like, we'll see what happens. And what happened with Rogan? It's like Rogan became the most powerful journalist the world has ever seen. So that's funny. And it turns out that when Kamala Harris decides not to go on Rogan's show, that's really hard on Kamala Harris and not very hard on Joe Rogan.
Yeah.
Right.
Pretty funny.
Whoa. So like there's an object lesson there.